Welcome to the Wayne Bennett podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Welcome to Wayne Bennett's podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Bennett. This is episode 157. It's actually New Year's Eve in 2024. And our guest today is the head football coach at Woodrow Wilson High School, Chad Street. Sarrett, welcome.
Hey, Wayne. How are you today?
Good. Let's go back a little bit. I don't know how much you know about this, but your grandfather, Lunda, he was a football and basketball player at Woodrow and quite a pretty outstanding player himself. He was a little older when you were born, wasn't he?
Yes.
Did you remember much about him?
Oh, yeah. He passed away as I was in college and stuff. So I got to know him very well and hear some stories from him playing for Coach Van Meter. And I got to talk to Coach Van Meter before he passed away about, coaching him and stuff and what an athlete and everything he was and basketball player. And actually, when Jerry Zaffaratis opened up Calicinos, he had a lot of history of it, and he had a program with him in it and stuff and gave it to me, and pretty interesting. Yeah, he was
probably a better basketball player than he was anything. He was in football. I've heard people comments and stuff that not only was he a good football player, but he was a punter that probably could have played some big time ball.
That's what Coach Van Meter told me and said that he told Coach he wasn't interested in going to college. He was just going to go to work.
Yeah. Now he did go to Beckley College and play basketball. And I remember seeing his name somewhere. He was a center, and but he also was the sports editor for the Pilot, which was the school newspaper. And he later worked at Beckley newspaper.
Beckley newspaper was a delivery and stuff for Beckley newspaper.
Is that what he did?
Yep.
Now, did he retire in that job?
He was in a bad accident and made him disabled, and so that's what put him. He was disabled from an accident when he was delivering newspapers.
Now, your dad, he of course was part of the 1962 undefeated basketball team at Woodrow Wilson High School, won the state championship, and it's the only undefeated team that Woodrow ever had in basketball. But he was also a football player. He was center, and he threw the shot and track. And I got to tell you a couple funny stories. I have never shared this with you, but at least I thought they were. When he was working at the Y, at the old Memorial Building, he ran the intramural program at Beckley College. And Paul Plumley, who used to own Dunkin' Donuts, Paul's no longer with us, but Paul and I were good friends. So we signed up for the intramural league at Beckley College and in basketball. And then they just put two or three other guys on our team, and some of the teams, the guys actually picked them and put them in, but so we just wanted to go play. None of us were basketball players, but just wanted to do something. Well, after a game or so, a couple of our guys quit showing up, and so Bain had a rule in the league: if a team doesn't have 5 players, he could fill in for the 5th player, and so it just so happened we needed him every time we played. We only had 4 players, and I don't know whether you remember, but that court was thin and it was short, and this was before they had a 3-point shot. But half court, he was dangerous on that court, and most Paul's job and my job was to take the ball in and throw it to Bain, or get a rebound and throw it to Bain. I remember one time we scored 48 points and he had 44, but we ended up in the middle of the pack. And another incident, when I started working at the Y, and we had moved down to the new Y on East Main Street. Archie Talley was coming in and doing basketball camps at that time. And Archie was a great basketball clinician and a fantastic ball player, but he was friends with a lot of these guys like Robert Reed from the Houston Rockets and Sugar Ray Leonard. They all kind of grew up around Maryland, College Park area or somewhere in that area. So when Archie would put on a camp for the Y, these guys would come to Beckley, Adrian Dantley and some of the guys, and for nothing and help out. So we're at the Y, and we decided to have a exhibition basketball game, and so we picked some guys from Beckley, that some of the better basketball players, and they were playing Sugar Ray Leonard, who was a pretty good basketball player too, and then Robert Reed and a few of those professional players, guys. I mean, Robert Reed was an all-star in the pros, and we sold tickets and people came, and man, I mean, it was packed. People all around the track up there and everything. And so the local team was playing a professional team. And Bain came down there every day and played at lunchtime. And so he was very familiar with the court. And he was still probably in his late 30s, maybe something like that. And man, he was popping them. I mean, and they didn't have a three-point shot at that time. If they would have, it would have been something else. But he scored about 34, 35 points. And Archie came to me after the game. He said, "Who is that guy?" And I said, "That's a local guy, you know." And then I told him who it was. He said, "Oh yeah, I know him, you know." But he was. But if they would have had a three-point shot when Bain was in high school, he would have averaged 40 points a game. He averaged 25 anyway, but it was something else. Now, coming from a grandfather and a father who played a lot of basketball, did you and your brothers play any basketball?
We played basketball in elementary school, and then when we got to junior high, we tried out and didn't make the team, so we got into wrestling and played football.
Now, I know your brother Sean. Shane, your other brother, I don't know.
Yeah, he's our older brother. He didn't play any sports or anything like that. He just went to school, and he's a local appraiser now, like our dad was.
Yeah, I knew who he was, but I didn't remember him playing any sports. Now, your dad went on and played basketball at Western Kentucky, and then he ended up at Furman with Coach Barksdale down there. He coached some at Clear Fork before he came to the Y, didn't he?
Coached 1 year at Clear Fork, was the PE teacher and head football, basketball, and baseball coach at Clear Fork.
He coached 1 year.
1 year.
Now, that's where he met your mother.
My mom was the secretary at Clear Fork.
I'll be darned. And now she was from down in Dorothy.
She grew up in Dorothy. Yep.
Yeah. And what was her maiden name?
McVeigh.
Okay. Now, your brother Sean, he wrestled, played football. Did you guys do track too? Some in middle school, junior high?
Sean did in high school. He threw the shot because his junior senior year he threw the shot, but I never did. I just wrestled and played football.
Yeah. Now, when you came through Park, we had some pretty good athletes at that time, didn't we?
Yeah, had real good. When I was in the 7th grade, that's when it was 7th, 8th, 9th, that team, Coach Lambert was the football coach. You were the assistant, went undefeated, and that was with Chris Gross and Fred Hill and Timmy Justice and those guys. All those guys were 9th graders, and you had that real good team. That when I still think Hubco is what it was called back then, had all-time points scored, highest points scored at Hubco, I believe.
Yeah.
That team.
Yeah, there were. I don't know whether that record's ever been broken.
I don't believe it has. That was a lot of points.
Yeah, I know that 1 year I think we had 7 guys in the finals or something. It was something else. But the football, when Chris Gross started out in the 7th grade, I think we only lost 1 game in 3 years, and then when you guys were there, we only lost one game each year, and our biggest nemesis usually was Bluefield.
Bluefield and the Isabel boys.
Yeah, yeah. That it seemed like every time I turned around, there was an Isabel coming up, and I noticed there was an Isabel that played for Graham High School this year. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, he's got to be a grandkid.
I guess he's got to be related to one of those guys down there.
Yeah, but that was that name was kind of a burden for us. But now, when you got in high school, you took a little growing spurt, and you, I think when you were a junior, you were like 6'4", 235, something like that. And you started center for Woodrow.
Started at center.
That was a pretty good bunch.
We had a good club. My senior year, we actually went 6-4. You know, we beat Capital. That's the first time Beckley had beat Capital at home. We beat them 21-14, and then beat a real good Mountain View team. We lost to Bluefield, Randy Moss at DuPont. Ended up losing the East on a blocked extra point. And there's one more in there. Oh, lost to Man by 1 at Man. And there's always been a play there that, I forget who they threw it to. And he just rolled up on the ground, and they said it was he caught the ball. So we lost 30-29 to Man.
Well, I had those years when Coach Lambert went to Woodrow. I was scouting for Woodrow. I was coaching at Park, but I was scout for Woodrow. And so when you guys were playing, I was scouting the team for you were going to play next week. And I got the opportunity to see Randy Moss play 3 years. And in all 3 years, they were playing South Charleston. And South Charleston had a real good football team that year. And I'm telling you, those are some of the best high school games I ever seen. And some of the best high school players I've ever seen. And then also Mount View had that one year they finished second in the state to Capital. And I think they had an Ingram boy and some of those guys were.
Yeah, Mount View always had tough teams, buddy. They were tough. That Edwards kid down there was tough that year.
And then, of course, Man was AAA at that time, and Tootsie Carter was. They were always tough, especially at Man. They were hard to beat, but I enjoyed the scouting. But I didn't get to watch Woodrow play a lot, but I enjoyed the scouting part of it and had the opportunity. Now you, after high school, you went to Marshall, and your wife, where did you meet her? She's a Beckley girl.
She's a Beckley girl. We met she's an old Beckley junior high girl, and I went to Park, and then we met in the 10th grade and started dating in the 11th grade, and she went to Marshall when I went to Marshall, and we just dated on and off, and finally just stayed dating, and got married. Probably the best decision I ever made in my life. And
was that did you always want to coach?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think my senior year after I graduated, I remember I come over and helped just before you had to have all that stuff. I come over to your guys' practices at Park with you and Charlie Boland and Coach Bartram and those guys, and helped a little bit right before I went away to school. And I enjoyed it. I think that gave me my fix. And, I had some good coaches in high school. It was good to me. I remember Coach Hill. He'd always take us down to West Virginia State and places like that to visit. And I remember him telling me, he said, teaching's a good job. He said, you'll never be rich, you'll never be poor, but you'll always have a job, and things like that. And Coach Hill was a good influence on me with that. So, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching kids develop and, get themselves better. So I really enjoyed it. I think that's what got me into coaching, was having good coaches growing up.
Just curious, what kind of music did you listen to when you were in high school?
Wayne, you're not going to believe this, but I've just never been a music guy. I've never really got into listening to music or anything like that. And
you ever listen to radio now?
Nope. I just when I get in my truck, it's kind of like just my quiet time, and I don't listen to anything and just ride. And
that reminds me of Coach Barksdale. He said he never listened to music or anything. But you graduated from Marshall. Your first coaching job was actually a wrestling job.
It was a wrestling job, and I think you helped me. You called me about it at Beckley Stratton in '99. I went over there, and Mr. Cantley and Rusty Rappold and Russ Mans, and wanted me to coach wrestling, and ended up coaching wrestling over there for a few years.
You had a pretty good bunch of guys came through there.
Had tough kids. You know, they were tough, and they bought into that wrestling. And you know, numbers was a problem when we first got there, but as we went, you know, the next couple of years, they really bought in and had a big group.
From your marriage, you've had 3 daughters, and tell me what all they're involved in or have been involved.
Well, my oldest daughter, she grew up cheerleading all the way through, you know, cheered at Woodrow, regional champs with Laura and Beth Radford, and placed high in the States. And then she went to WVU, graduated from WVU a year ago, and she works at WVU right now. She's getting ready to move to Columbus in February to work for the FDIC. And then my middle daughter just finished up her 3rd semester at WVU. She's going into elementary teaching. She was our dancer. She danced all the way through and really enjoys it. And you know, she's at WVU right now in elementary ed and works at a daycare facility up there. Super nice. They're good to her. She works a lot. And then my youngest daughter, Macy, she's in the 10th grade at Woodrow. You know, she plays volleyball, and she enjoys just working out and stuff. She's likes to go and run and work out in the weight room, things like that.
Was it right after you were married you got cancer?
Yep, it was. I got married in March of '99, and then that fall, that was my first year. Really, my second year coaching at Woodrow football. I got they called it non-Hodgkin's Burkitt's lymphoma. And I had a mass on the outside of my large intestines about the size of a softball.
Huh. And what kind of symptoms did you have?
Man, it was just real bad stomach pains. And that summer, actually, I was working at the Y at their day camp. And man, I would just get super bad pains in my stomach and was tired all the time. And, you know, I just fought it all summer long. And I can remember it was Labor Day weekend. And I got up early and I was going to the Y to work out. And I said, man, I'm not going to fight this no more. And ended up going to the hospital. And from there on, I ended up at Raleigh General and then was at UVA and ended up taking a bunch of chemo from September to December. And they wiped it out and ended up saving my life.
Huh. And you had nothing?
No, they said it was such fast growing. The fast growing cancers, they can kill fast.
Oh.
And people can tolerate the chemo and stuff like that, and so that was a good thing. And I haven't had any good checkups and everything ever since.
Yeah, I had kind of a cancer situation myself, you know, and it was a total shock for me. And I thought I was in the best shape of my life at that time, and then it was just one of them things. But luckily, catching it early is the main thing, and very fortunate. Now, after you were coaching wrestling at Beckley Stratton, and then you were helping with football.
Yeah, I was a volunteer with football. That's what you know, Coach Dale Stafford. I was home in the summer. I was finishing my degree, and I already did all my student teaching. I had a couple classes to take in the summer at Marshall. And he's like, man, you just need to come over and help. And so that August of '98 is when I started volunteering at Woodrow, helping with the line and stuff.
And you went into the high school wrestling for a year or two, didn't you? There was 1 year that I think it was maybe Jay Thomas and those guys that I had at Beckley Stratton. It was their junior year. And Coach Barchman took a leave of absence, and they didn't have anybody that was going to coach it. So I coached that 1 year with those boys, with Jay and Josh Evans and those boys. Now, somewhere along the line, you become the athletic director.
I was the athletic director for a little bit, but it just wasn't, they didn't have it structured. It wasn't a full-time athletic director job. I was teaching 3 classes of special ed, and then having to do athletic director, and it just wasn't, because the size of the school at Woodrow, and I think that's what made him go to a full-time athletic director. You can't do it. You can't do it part-time with all the sports. You just can't have a block. An athletic director is busy all day long.
Yeah.
So I did it for about a semester, and then went back to football.
Yeah, that when they first started the AD thing, before then they didn't, in junior high, most of the time the coaches took care of their own scheduling. Of course, I coached football, wrestling, and track for a while, so I took care of most of that. But then when they started the AD, they just gave us a period, and they gave me a phone in my room. We didn't have phones in the rooms back then. They gave me a phone in my room, and that was it. And then I ran the county tournaments in junior high for 15 years or more. And I asked for a $25 raise because it really wasn't even paying for my gas and stuff. And they said I couldn't do it. And I said, well, you need to find somebody else. But,
it's a very underpaid job. I would say our athletic director at Woodrow really does a great job, Andrew Pennick, and he's on top of things, and he's been a good one.
But I would have liked to, if they would have had a full-time athletic director, I would have liked to try that, before I retired or anything, because I kind of like organizing things and stuff. But it's just one of them things. Now you, after you quit as an AD, you started coaching football again, and you took a wrestling job back over, didn't you?
Yeah, I took
it. It almost died down. Chuck Smith took it one year and only had about 7 or 8 wrestlers.
Yeah, and then I took over, and Mr. Thompson, Ray St. Thompson, he was the director of buildings and maintenance, and got him, and me and him got together, and I got some people in the community to donate some money, and we revamped our mat room and weight room and stuff just for the wrestling team over there, and I coached it from, I think it was 2007 all the way to 2019.
Yeah. Now, let's go back just a second. I know you've been asked this 1,000 times, and I know the answer, but how'd you get the name Street?
My mom just been original, and she just that's what she tells me. So, she just thought it'd be unique that my middle name would be Street, and the only people that call me Chad, I tell people this, is the Banks and Coach Powell. Coach Powell's always called me Chad. So,
well, it's a rare name, but your grandfather had a rare name, Lunda. I've never heard that name.
Yeah, he was Lunda Calvin, and actually my dad had an older brother who was Lunda Calvin II, and they called him LC. During
your time period, you've coached with a lot of different coaches, different experience, and usually you take from each person. But then in around 2016, you became the head coach at Woodrow Wilson, the 12th head coach. And I mean, we're talking 100 years now. That's not a lot of turnover.
No, it's not a lot of turnover. Like I said, I tell people all the time, I mean, in this day and time, you're turning over coaches left and right. But think about when I was at Woodrow, it was the same staff for years. Same staff, even the assistants all the way through until I think even when Sean was there, it was the same guys. And, it's evolving. Coaching's become more of a full-time year-round thing for all, especially in football. Football, there's, you get a little downtime here over the holidays around Christmas and stuff, but, coming the first of the year, you'll start back up, and, it's a thing.
Now, you mentioned Sean. Sean played at Park, and he went to Woodrow, and he was All-State. He played in the North-South football game. But he didn't get a bunch of offers when he...
No, he didn't. And, it's funny. In the North-South game, Coach Martin from over at Oak Hill was coaching the game, and he said in the Charleston paper that Sean was the best. He said he didn't know what schools were looking at, but he said Sean was the best lineman in the state of West Virginia that year. And he ended up going to Fork Union for a couple of years, and that was a great experience for him and really opened up some avenues for him in life. And he done well and ended up getting it was down to the last day, and he was either going to go to Youngstown State or Kent State. And the O-line coach from Kent State drove to my mom and dad's house on that evening and sat in our living room and talked with them. And I think that's what sold Sean going to Kent State.
He ended up playing.
Oh yeah, played. Was a starter. He's junior, senior year, and done well. And actually, he was a little older because he'd went to military school But when he was getting ready to go, he got into running a lot with their head coach, Coach Schumann, and he ended up breaking. He had a Jones fracture in his foot and had to have surgery. And he had surgery on his foot the day of my wedding, and he was coming in the day on wedding rehearsal, and he was coming into the church walking on crutches, and he stopped. And when he stopped, he broke the other foot in the exact same thing. So the day of my wedding, Big Sean's in a wheelchair having a bridesmaid push him down the aisle. And that ended up put him out a little bit. But he was he played well. He played well. He played with his college teammate. James Harrison was one of his college teammates at Kent State. Josh Cribbs, who was a quarterback for him, ended up being a return guy for the Cleveland Browns. So. And then after he graduated, Coach Pruitt was still at Marshall, and he ended up getting a GA job at Marshall and was there for a couple of years.
Now, he moved around some in the college, and then he ended up, what was his first pro? Was it Pittsburgh?
It was with the Steelers. After Marshall, there was a guy at Marshall named Jim Collins who coached linebackers, and he'd been at Florida and with the Redskins stuff, and he really liked Coach Collins. And Sean was actually on his way back from Gainesville. He'd went down and interviewed with Urban Meyer for a special teams assistant job. And Coach Collins was at Duke then with Coach Cutliff. And he called Sean and said, hey, come over and interview for this quality control job. I think you'll really like it. So Sean goes over and he ends up at Duke and was at Duke for a couple of years. And their wide receiver coach, Scotty Montgomery, applied for a job with the Steelers. And ended up with the Steelers, and he called Sean and said, hey, I want you to come up here. There's a job I think you'd be really good at. And it was quality control on the offensive side. And Sean went up there, and that's how he got his foot in with the pros.
He got a Super Bowl ring, didn't he?
No, they never made it to the Super Bowl. Made it to the AFC Championship and got beat by the Patriots in the AFC Championship, but never made it to the Super Bowl. But he was there for a while. He worked his way up from quality control to assistant offensive line, and got to work with Mike Muschamp, Hall of Famer, Dick LeBeau, and those guys, and be around the Steelers, and then was the head offensive line coach for a couple of years.
Now he went from there to San Diego, and now he's at Minnesota.
Yeah, he's at Minnesota.
They just beat Green Bay the other night.
Yeah.
So they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, got a big game coming up against the Lions for the number 1 seed this Sunday.
That's interesting. Well, good for him. He's I know it's staying busy.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you when you took over the head coaching job and became the 12th head coach, of course, Van Meter and Colasurto beat up a lot of that 100 years of coaching. But now you have a great facility. I mean, you got turf field, you've got a great weightlifting room, you've got, you started a logo type thing, Defend the Town.
Mm-hmm.
I know the name Sarrett now there's 4 of you guys in the Football Hall of Fame. But the name Sarrett is synonymous, just like the Colasurto name, with Woodrow Wilson football. You've had you've went through, in your coaching, you've been through COVID, you've been through, I know one time when you were coaching wrestling, you guys were at the MSAC tournament and it snowed like crazy and they called you back home or something.
Well, that year, I called and said, hey, are we going to get a bus to go? And then they said, yeah. So I go up to Parkersburg, and my assistants are going to bring the team the next day. And we're in the seating meeting, and the bus driver calls me and goes, hey, the superintendent just canceled all trips going out of the county. And so they canceled it. And, they tell you can take cars and do all this stuff. And I was just always a firm believer. Wrestling teams I had was a lot of kids didn't have that parent support and things like that. They were just out there enjoying it, doing the sport, and just tough kids, and wouldn't have had a way. So if we couldn't go all together, we weren't going to go, and that's what we ended up doing.
And I used to when we have a snow day, I'd load, and we had a wrestling tournament, I'd load up and take off and ask for permission later.
Oh yeah. Well, there was one time I think during that big blizzard, I forget what year it was, we went to Point Pleasant. And I was standing there in Point Pleasant, and me and Cliff Warden was talking, and Cliff answers his phone, and it's his principal. And he goes, he said, my principal just told me don't leave. And I told him I was already here standing with you. And I pulled my phone out of my pocket, and I had a bunch of missed calls from Bob Maynard. And I was like, oh, goodness. So I called him back, and he said, Coach, have you already left? And I said, we're standing right here in Point Pleasant. And he goes, don't come back. Bad storm's coming. So me and Cliff kind of chuckled about that, and we ended up staying all the way till Sunday, till the roads cleared up. Yeah, that wrestling and those snowstorms, I mean, you probably know better than anybody. It puts a damper on you.
Well, we had, when I was refereeing back in the old days, I usually called the regional out at Shady. And it seemed like every time we had a region, it snowed. And this was a double A single. Everybody was always worried about Big Creek. Man, is Big Creek going to get here? I mean, yeah. Well, they was usually the first team here. When they had to travel the farthest and the roughest, and they usually showed up first.
Oh, yeah.
Now but like I said, you got great facilities, the lights. Man, there's something else that adds a lot to it when you score a touchdown. My wife and I went to every home game this year and had nice crowds. You got great support. And you've had, in your coaching, I mean, you've been honored with the National Federation of High School Coaches, and you guys had a good team this year. You're going to lose a lot of seniors. What do you got coming back?
We got a good group coming back. On our line, we're gonna lose a couple guys, but we got some young guys that will be able to step in there. We're going to lose Keandre Good, who was second team All-State. We're going to lose Drake Bolin, Isaac Lambert. We're going to lose those guys. But I think we got some guys that are going to fill in right there. It's got a lot of reps and got in there in some varsity games. In our backfield, we're going to lose a lot of our backs. We're going to lose some linebackers. But, man, you got A.J. Thomas coming back. He was first team All-State defensive back. And Preston Clary. He was All-State honorable mention, but it'll be we won't have as many backs as what we've had in the years past. With Bryce Ford and Connor Ray and Jacob Reeves and Landon Jones and those guys. That'll be where we got to replace some people.
Now you said marrying your wife was the greatest decision you ever made. You guys during the winter and spring months, you lift in the mornings at 5 o'clock, 3 days a week?
Yep, 3 days a week.
And so to get there and start at 5 o'clock, you have to get up. So what time do you roll out of bed?
I usually get up about 3 o'clock and get over to the field house and get things set up. And then there would be a group of young men, like I said, just didn't have a way to get there, and I'd make a couple trips. I'd probably see you and Coach Bosick on your morning walk. I was probably making my second trip of picking kids up, putting 4 at a time in my truck and getting them there.
And you guys, after they work out, you feed them, don't you?
Yeah. That's one thing I thought. We sat down as a staff the year before, and we thought what one of the weaknesses was kids just don't eat nowadays. They don't eat. They don't want to eat a school lunch. They want to go all day, then try to practice or work out and not eat. So we just made it a point to earmark, and we have been blessed to have great parents that supported us and donated a lot, and had some Hall of Famers, alumni come back and donate to where we could fix them a breakfast three mornings a week.
There's some of the younger kids that don't have driver's license and stuff. The parents have to get up and bring them. You get any complaints?
It comes down to this, and I've told people this. It's about how good do you want to be, and it comes to choices in 4A football in the state of West Virginia. And I'll probably say every level of football. If you're not working out in the off season, you're not going to be very successful. So they buy into it, and we have some that won't, and it just it really reflects on their growth as a football player.
You mentioned the 4A. Are you for, or what do you think about the 4 classifications?
I think that they need to add more teams to it, because when you get into it, we're the only 4A in Southern West Virginia. And if they're going to make us play 60% of our schedule, that's very expensive on our travel. And, it's not, they talk about what's best for kids. here's a perfect example of this is best for kids. So we're going to play Washington this past season in the Panhandle. So let's say kids get to school at 7 o'clock, 7:15 on Friday morning. We get on a bus at 11. So we go to stop in Harrisonburg, eat our pregame meal, go to Washington, play the game at 7 o'clock, do pizzas and Gatorades, put them back on the bus at probably 9:30, 10 o'clock. And those kids didn't walk out of the field house till Saturday morning at 3:30. Wow. That's a long day for a high school kid.
Yeah.
And then you get into what real people don't look at is the dollars. How much a trip like that costs. I mean, just the charter bus alone, because we have such troubles with school buses. I mean, school buses' number one concern is getting their runs and getting kids to school and from school. So Raleigh County Schools didn't have 2 school buses to take our football team. So we had to get a charter bus, and that's $5,500 to take us to the Panhandle.
Wow. Is your schedule the same as last year?
It's the same as of right now. I'm waiting to see if they're going to change anything. You know, what you hear through the rumor mills that they're going to add some more teams to 4A and, you know, go back to what there was before all the people complained and filed the injunctions. So we're waiting to see. But right now it's the same. If anything changed, it would be the Bluefield game. We'd have to find another 3A or 4A opponent in for the Bluefield game.
And that's a shame because that's a decent rivalry.
Good rivalry.
You got a good
and they don't think about that is like football and the football gates and everything. You understand it. That's money for all the minor sports. It helps the whole athletic program. So, you know, with local teams like a Greenbrier East, a Princeton, an Oak Hill, a Bluefield, a Riverside, GW, those people will travel and come to those games and, you know. But like I said, when we went to Washington this past season, you know, it's their first game. It's going to be crap. But, you know, unless you're a parent or a loyal fan, you're not going to make a drive to the Panhandle. And then with all the stuff on YouTube with video productions and things like that, a lot of people say, man, I'm not going to go to that game. I'm going to watch it on TV because you can just put it right there on your TV in your living room and watch it.
Yeah, I understand that. Now, what about the rule too that players are allowed one-time transfer? What do you think about that?
You know, I think I just think, you know, it's a bad pill in some areas with that because, you know, you can have kids, they can work out with you all summer long, and then come first day of August they go to another team. And, you know, with the things that we do, you know, you have those 32 flex days. We'll do a lot of stuff in the summer and in the spring with football and prepare and things like that. And then, you know, a guy bails on you or something like that. And, you know, it comes down to this. And with us being the only 4A, I think a lot of people run from the 4A competition and want to go. They think that a lower level is their better chance. And it's the way the world is today. Everything's instant gratification. Everybody's searching for that 1 year. I'm going to win a state championship. You know, I mean, you look at the teams that was in the 4A 4A semifinals. They all had transfers. That transferred into their schools.
Some of them had 19 out of 20.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and what's that tell a kid and things like that? And you know, everybody's got a right to go to school to get their education. You know, if my daughter if I thought my daughter could get a better education in Charleston, she wanted to go, but when it comes to playing sports, I still think there should be a penalty for something for the transfer stuff.
And something people don't realize too, that even with the one-time transfer, recruiting is illegal. But
it happens. Social media, and I still call it Twitter, but it's X, and you know, stuff like that. Instagram, you can get on there and they message those kids and the parents and players, okay, come here and we can do this and that. And it goes on. And you know, it's just the nature of it. I mean, in some states, Lord, Wayne, they're having NIL deals for high school kids in certain states now. So I dread if that ever comes to West Virginia.
I know that's absolutely ridiculous. And you know, and I'm not even, as far as NIL money on a college level, I'm not against it at all. However, I think it needs to be transparent and regulated. Instead of the way the NCAA just kind of threw it out there, and man, nobody knows who's getting paid what, and it's just crazy.
It is.
And some of these guys are making more than professional players.
And unreal. I mean, if you're in college and you're making more than the guy that's playing on Sunday, there's something wrong with our system.
Now, you're still a young guy. What, you're 50?
Getting ready to be. I'll be 50 this July.
Okay, you're 49, 50. You're still a young guy. And as far as coaching is concerned, you have a bucket list? I mean, is there something you would like to see? I mean, other than a championship, was there something or personally, is there something that you would like to do or travel to?
Yeah, I like, me and my wife, we talk about it, just traveling and just, see things in the United States we haven't seen when we retire and do stuff like that and just get in the car and drive around and not have a schedule. I mean, we're both scheduled people. We get up and go to work and, set and just the daily grind of, and that's being an adult and that's what you're supposed to do. And then there'll be a point in time when we retire and we might get in our truck and just drive across the country. And, I like to hunt. I don't know if she'd want to go on some hunting trips, but, Rocky Powell and Dale Stafford, they're my hunting buddies. And we talk about going out west and going on an elk hunt or going on a brown bear hunt or going to Canada, stuff like that. I think that's what would be ideally when you retire.
You were talking at a Rotary Club meeting a few years ago, and here's a quote: "Unity, family, and togetherness have to be instilled into these kids. Integrity is important. In today's society, there are many distractions. We have to keep these kids on the right path." That's quite a testimony. And Coach, I thank you for coming and talking to me. Is there anything you'd like to add? Or?
No, Wayne, I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing this podcast like we was talking before about the history of Beckley and Woodrow Wilson. And, sometimes I think we get out of, people forget about the history of Woodrow Wilson and the athletic programs and things like that. And, people move away and, people forget about Woodrow Wilson. And then some people move back and they're still not in the area and they forget where they come from. And I think that this reminds people how good Woodrow Wilson and people was to them when they were at Woodrow. And, it was good to me and my brother. And, we like to give back. And, me and my wife talk about it all the time, giving back to our community. And we just need to get more people on board with giving back to our community and doing things like that. We've been blessed at Beckley football since I've taken over, like you talked earlier. Doug Legurski jumped on board with me and donated a lot to revamp our weight room. Kevin Radford was big in the revamp of our locker room, done a lot of work, remodeling it. The community jumped in with our lockers, and we had a little locker donation thing, sponsor a locker, and had 70 lockers sponsored by our community. Weight rooms ever growing. And then you got a guy like Matt Morris who, he's just in the community and he's there just about every day, comes and helps. He's one of the guys that help cook along with our assistants, Jerry Umberger, Dave Ray, Jeremy Reeves, those guys, Mike Duncan, former player, those guys, man. And that's what it's about. It's about these kids, because a lot of them don't have the father figure that I had when I was growing up to teach them about life. And so that's what a coach's job is to do. My dad knew when he wasn't there that Coach Colasurto would hold me to the same standards, Coach Powell, Dale Stafford, you, and things like that. And that's what coaching's about. And I think sometimes coaches get away from that. They get worried about trying to win that trophy or, I want to be the all-time wins guy and things like that. And that's not what it's about. It's about raising these kids to be, I say this to our team all the time, about being good dads, good husbands, and good men in their community.
Yeah. Are you going to be able to keep all your coaches, or you got a couple leaving? Or?
No, I think they'll all stay. I think they're all going to stay, and they're not they don't have anything going on. Actually, we're going to add a strength and conditioning coach. His name's Scott Wilkes. He played at Marshall with Doug and Matt. He's married to Kate Cushman from the Beckley area. And he was actually a strength coach at Marshall, at Western Kentucky, and Hofstra. So, so we're going to add him on. He's going to be running all of our strength and conditioning for us. Great guy. Great guy.
Well, Coach, come back and talk to us anytime you want to. I'm glad to have you.
Hey, thank you, Wayne. I appreciate you.
Anybody else out there that'd like to be on our podcast, you can hit me up at awbennett50@gmail.com and we'll get you on here. And remember, until next time, if you're not dead yet, you're not done yet. This is Wayne Bennett. God bless you.